Welcome to TOI Auto, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot has been said in the past about the new direction shown by Jaguar, and we have been driving the new prototype here today in Gaydon. But to talk more about the new strategy from Jaguar and what it plans to do, we've got Rawdon with us. He is the managing director for Jaguar, so he's in charge of the ship right now. And Rawdon, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, Harpreet. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and so first of all, I'm sure all our viewers would want to know, this radical change in strategy. There was a way we all knew Jaguar in terms of design, in terms of approach. What was the idea to go completely, just flip the narrative?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and important people understand why, really. If you think about managing brands, which is really what we're doing here, is brands. Jaguar is a 90-year-old brand, and in any brand's history, sometimes you need to make really small incremental changes. In fact, to be honest, in the world of marketing, most brand management is tiny little increments. But where we got to with Jaguar, there was a combination of technology changes, competition changes. If we looked at actually how the brand was performing on a global basis, if we looked at actually the profile and the customer base that we were appealing to, the relevance of us socially, put all of that together, what we believe for Jaguar, and we still believe it, is actually it wasn't the time for one of those small incremental changes. It was the time for a much bigger, bolder, probably braver leap into the future, because it was a combination of all of those factors coming together. And I think, if I reflect on that, and if you look at particularly what's happening coming out of Asia in terms of the Chinese competition, I think that position, that decision has never been more validated by just in terms of how the competitive landscape is changing in the mid-market and even in the bottom end of the premium market. It kind of really says that actually for Jaguar to succeed, to move back to be honest, where it was most successful. If you think about the Jaguars of the past, either in terms of when they were culturally more relevant, when they were the iconic vehicles that people associate us with, yeah. They are those vehicles that actually are much more about desire, are much more about when as a brand we were known for making beautiful vehicles in lower numbers at more elevated price points. So I think for Jaguar it makes sense, but also in terms of just how the whole JLR business model operates, this business model, if we look at Range Rover as an example, is absolutely where that brand thrives. If you have a really, really strong brand, a really strong product proposition, you're able to then maintain those elevated price points. And that's where our business model really works. So I think there are a number of things at play, but it called for a big change.
And I was earlier talking to one of your colleagues, and I got to know that ICE as a powertrain, internal combustion, was never considered. So what was the reason for that, and why did you choose to go fully electric?
Fully electric powertrain is, it's the right choice for Jaguar, and it's the right choice for a number of reasons. If we think about what a Jaguar needs to drive like, a Jaguar, and this is really what you've been experiencing today by experiencing some of those iconic vehicles from our past. A Jaguar needs to have, it needs to be fast. It needs to have power in reserve. It needs to be, it needs to have more power than you need, than actually you'd ever want. It needs to be really refined. It's got to be a beautiful car to drive. It's got to be a costing place to be. It should be quiet and calm. So if you put all of those things together, EV powertrain was the natural choice. It also is a fundamental enabler for the proportions of the vehicle. If you look at just, the lowness of the Type 01 bonnet, it's really sheer, really flat, really low. The EV enablement is critical to some of those proportions of the vehicle. And then, I guess the final point for us is some of the slightly more technical aspects of the car. We utilize the battery structure to give us torsional rigidity. This is the most torsionally rigid Jaguar we've ever made. Why is that important? Well, that's what gives the driver confidence when turning and cornering. The speed with which we can put power to different axles, to left or to right, we can do that in a thousandth of a second with an EV powertrain. We couldn't do that with a combustion engine. We're going to deliver a vehicle with over 1,000 horsepower. Now, you could do that with a combustion engine, but it would be very difficult to produce at the price point we're putting it at. So that sense of how the EV powertrain is delivering or enabling a very, very specific driving characteristic is really important. I guess the two other key points. So because we have the way we design the battery, it gives us perfect 50-50 weight distribution. So you don't get that pitching and roll that you get sometimes with the combustion engine. And because we're not cab forward, like a lot of EVs where you sit really, really far forward, in this Jaguar, you sit absolutely in the center of gravity of the vehicle, which again puts you inside the car and really makes the driver feel really comfortable and confident in the dynamics of it. Because, and again, that sense would have been really difficult to deliver in a combustion engine. So for us, the driving characteristics, the look of the car, super important. And it's EV underpinnings that have really enabled us to focus very, very single-mindedly on those things.
So, like all the characteristics that you spoke about, having driven the car today earlier, the prototype, I understand where you're coming from and how those, those things have been validated, how the EV powertrain helps it. But that's this car.
Yep.
Now, this is, Jaguar as a brand is, in a way, it's the rebirth of the brand. Going forward, of course, you will make newer models. You'll have newer models coming in. So 2 questions on that. Is this platform, this new bespoke platform, modular enough to support vehicles of different size and body shapes? And second, when you're making those different vehicles, do you still think the EV powertrain can take care of all requirements? Because each vehicle for this new premium Jaguar brand will need to have a different character.
Yeah. So it's a great question, Arpit. So I think what the architecture will give us and what all future Jaguars off this architecture will have is, it will have a sense of similar, proportion. So this is a unique art. We've developed this architecture specifically for these cars. When we started with the design vision, we couldn't make it on any of our platforms. It also didn't work on any of the competitive platforms out there, so we devised our own. And it's been devised specifically with a family of vehicles in mind. So it is flexible in that context. All of the vehicles will have great presence. So this vehicle is, it has a stature, it has a sense of drama about it, and part of that is its scale. Part of that is the dramatic long bonnet, and there will be definitely family characteristics, whether it's the very, very pure surfacing that you saw on the concept car of Type 00, or I'd say the proportions of the bonnet in relationship with the overall height. So those will be common to all Jaguars, but every Jaguar from this platform will have its own distinct personality. And again, obviously I've got the luxury of, I know what's coming after this vehicle, so I'm very confident in that, and it has its own personality, but it's unmistakably a Jaguar from this design language. And in its own way, the other vehicles that will come off the platform will also benefit, not just in terms of, all Jaguars need to have a certain dynamic capability, irrespective of what type of vehicle or what type of segment they're going towards. So yeah, in that context, I'm really confident that we can get a family of vehicles that actually are all off this platform. And also, can you hear that?
If you want to start that answer again, you can do.
Yeah, okay.
It's okay.
I think it does. Okay, it's okay. So, yeah, I'm really confident that this platform is going to be able to give us a family of cars that, again, have that familial resemblance, but also have their own very, very specific personalities. And I think in the different cars, that EV powertrain will also play and have certain benefits. So for example, if a car is more Road 2 focused, then you can really focus on that level of refinement and calm and quiet that you get from an electric powertrain. So there are lots of benefits apart from the dynamics.
And now, since you have, even after in the last few years, completely changed even the brands. Now, Jaguar is a different brand, Defender, and then you've got
Yep.
Discovery. So, will Jaguar, like its recent past, go into the SUV range, or do you see Jaguar playing in the the low slung designs only?
Yeah, so it's almost funny. We've been waiting so long to talk about actually the what is the first car from Jaguar, and already you want to talk about the second or the third. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk specifically about the other vehicles that are going to come. I will talk a little bit about the purpose of the reason we chose the 4-door GT as the first place is not because we felt it was going to be the highest selling vehicle necessarily, but we felt it was the best route to reposition the brand. So think of it in terms of that's its job. It's probably the purest to the original design vision in terms of actually what the car should look like, and its job in the range really is to position us at the new price point. Other vehicles that will be in the range will effectively go after different target groups and perform very, very different functions. All Jaguars will be dramatic. All Jaguars will be relatively low for their sector, so don't expect us to do a high-sided direct competitor to Range Rover. Why would we do that? We already have the best SUV on the planet. Why would we want to do another high-sided SUV? But there will be a variety that comes that we think will really broaden and stretch its appeal.
And Rawdon, for you, what's the kind of potential you see from the Indian market when this car is launched there? How do you see India in your overall scheme of things?
I think India is it's an exciting market for us in terms of, I guess, the wealth and the growing wealth that you see that, because obviously we've decided to move to more elevated price points, and that's definitely an aspect that's attractive for India. I think Jaguar has a really quite a special place in the sort of Indian psyche. It was a little bit of a surprise to me when I really started to unpack that. You think, wow, it really means something different here than it means perhaps in some other places. So I think that will definitely help us. But I think what we find out, whether it's in India or in the US or in China or in the UK, the reason that people will be attracted to this vehicle, they tend to be relatively common. People are attracted to it because it looks like nothing else on the road. It's beautifully designed, it's got incredible technology, and they want a car that says something really specific about them. And they want a car that looks like nothing else on the road, because the individual that's attracted to Jaguar will be, by their very nature, is very confident in themselves and very, very individual. Now, I think actually there will be a group of people in the Indian market for whom arriving with that sense of kind of drama and presence, I think that could be hugely appealing, and I think it could really take off.
And when the Type 00, the brand reveal film came, there was a lot of criticism. A lot of people did not like the new direction. Since then till now, a lot of learning has come through for you. The vehicle has been developed a lot. So going forward, when you position the brand, the vehicle, is there something you would do differently? Like, for example, from our viewers' perspective, the choice of colors has been very different for the cars. The way it's been positioned. So all of that. So have you planned any kind of change in that?
I think the launch experience was a fascinating experience to be part of, and I think you're right. We got an awful lot of coverage, and we got an awful lot of comments on social media. Some very positive, some not so. What I would say though is we're talking about Jaguar, and there is only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. So that sense around the launch, its job was to get Jaguar back in the conversation. And genuinely, the reason this is one of the most anticipated launches is because, Jaguar is a brand that people feel passionate about, but a big part of it is what we created. So in terms of that launch process, it was there to get eyeballs, if you like, to get people interested in what we were doing. We definitely learned things though. So I think, what I found particularly, and in hindsight, maybe it's obvious, but Social media is a very binary platform. I love it, I hate it, it's black, it's white, there's no place for nuance, there's no place for a kind of a narrative. And actually, perhaps why Jaguar changed, the question you first asked me, why, how does this vehicle link to our heritage? Those messages were, we lost that narrative for a period of time. And that's why, certainly for the last probably 12 months, I've spent a lot of time just explaining why to people and just unpacking that, whether that's in things like this or podcasts or long form interviews. And when we present the car and when we explain all of those details and actually explain how this absolutely, the DNA of this car is absolutely quintessentially Jaguar, I found actually people understand it and they get it. So for us, that sense around, how we tell our story and making sure that we control the narrative. And certainly this next phase that you'll see, and we will arrive, the vehicle will make its global debut in New York, and it will arrive in style, but it'll be the vehicle is the star. Yep. Now, I don't think we want to follow we won't want to just follow usual traditional automotive stereotypes. We want to do something that's a bit different. But actually the narrative needs to be about, the incredible feats of engineering and design that have made that possible. Because let's be clear, one of the many things that was said about Type 00 was, well, you'll never be able to make that. You won't be able to do that. And we have. And it's not been easy. It's not been cheap. And we could have done it. There's many ways we could have done a lot easier. But actually that sense of a refusal to compromise and a real sense of, no, we've got to do it. We've got to do it this way. And that's telling that story is what we will do when we unveil and then tell the story of Type 01. And I think that needs to be done in a certain way. It needs to be done in a very Jaguar way. It needs to feel very elevated. And I think it's an interesting journey ahead. In terms of vehicle colours, we will launch the vehicle, the range in a relatively small number of colours. Colour is an important part of our brand world, but also we clearly need to know what type of colours people want to choose for their vehicle, and they will give clients enough range and enough scope to find something that's perfect for them. And maybe I guess a final word on colour is, the launch colour that we've chosen was specifically designed for this vehicle, and it was specifically designed to show the proportions and the surfacing and the details and all of that. And it's a beautiful satin paint, and it's absolutely stunning, and I can't wait for you to see it.
Wow. And just one last question that our Indian viewers would be very much interested in. October is when we get to see the global reveal of the car. And how long before people in India can expect that?
Well, I think we'll be delivering cars to Indian clients probably in the summer of next year. So really not that long to wait before there. And I say we'll be activating in the Indian market early in 27. So can't wait to do that. It's going to be a really exciting part of our journey.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm sure a lot of people will look forward to that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Arpit.
Pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, me too.